There's a secret they don't want you to know. A truth so raw, so uncomfortable, that it's been buried beneath centuries of moral platitudes and feel-good philosophies. But 500 years ago, a man named Machiavelli whispered it into the darkness of human nature. And his words still echo through the corridors of power today. You've been taught to be good, to play fair, to trust that kindness will be rewarded, and honesty will prevail. But what if I told you that the very people who taught you these lessons live by an entirely different set of rules? What if the game you're playing has been rigged from the very beginning? Tonight, I want to take you on a journey into the shadows of human psychology, where the uncomfortable truths of our existence wait patiently to be acknowledged. This isn't about becoming cruel or manipulative. This is about understanding the world as it truly is, so you can navigate it with your eyes wide open. Machiavelli wrote about lions and foxes, about strength and cunning, about the delicate dance between fear and love. He understood something that most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid, that human nature is not what we pretend it to be. Picture yourself as a child, believing that the world operates on fairness and justice. You raise your hand in class, follow the rules, share your toys, and expect others to do the same. But slowly, painfully, you begin to notice the cracks in this beautiful illusion. The teacher's pet gets away with things you'd be punished for. The bully never seems to face consequences. The person who takes credit for your work gets the promotion, and you're left wondering what you did wrong, when the truth is far more unsettling. You were playing by rules that others had already abandoned. Machiavelli saw this pattern playing out in the courts of Renaissance Italy, where princes rose and fell like waves against the shore. He watched good men destroy themselves through naivety, while cunning leaders secured their power through methods that made moral philosophers shudder. But here's what they don't tell you about Machiavelli's philosophy. It wasn't born from cruelty or malice. It emerged from a deep, almost painful love for human potential, and a desperate desire to see good people succeed in a world that often punishes goodness. He understood that intentions, no matter how pure, mean nothing if you lack the power to implement them. A leader with the noblest heart can watch their kingdom burn, while a pragmatic ruler saves thousands of lives through decisions that historians will later judge harshly. Think about the relationships in your own life. How many times have you been the generous one, the understanding one, the one who always gives the benefit of the doubt? And how often has that generosity been met with genuine gratitude versus subtle exploitation? There's a psychological principle at work here that Machiavelli intuited centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. When we're predictably kind, we become psychologically invisible to those around us. Our kindness becomes expected, taken for granted, like the air we breathe. But the person who is strategically unpredictable, who can be both generous and firm, who commands respect alongside affection, they become magnetic. Not because they're cruel, but because they understand the complex symphony of human motivation. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved, but he also said that the ideal is to be both. Fear without love breeds rebellion. Love without respect breeds contempt. But the combination creates something powerful, influence that lasts. This principle extends far beyond political power. In every relationship you have, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, there exists a delicate balance of power dynamics that most people navigate unconsciously and often destructively. You've probably experienced this without realizing it. The friend who only calls when they need something, knowing you'll always say yes. The partner who takes your loyalty for granted while demanding constant proof of their worth. The boss who promotes the person who plays politics while overlooking your dedicated work. These aren't coincidences. They're patterns that emerge when good people refuse to acknowledge the game being played around them. Machiavelli would look at these situations and ask, "Why are you surprised? You've trained them to treat you this way." But recognizing these patterns isn't about becoming cynical or cruel. It's about developing what psychologists now call emotional intelligence, the ability to read the subtext of human interactions and respond appropriately. When Machiavelli advised princes to study war even in times of peace, he wasn't promoting violence. He was teaching them to understand conflict so they could prevent it. Knowledge of darker strategies isn't meant to encourage their use. It's meant to recognize when they're being used against you. Consider the workplace dynamic where someone consistently takes credit for collaborative efforts. A naive person confronts them directly, creating an enemy. A Machiavellian thinker documents their contributions, builds alliances quietly, and ensures their efforts are visible to decision-makers before the credit can be stolen. The difference isn't cruelty versus kindness. It's strategic thinking versus wishful thinking. It's understanding that good intentions need smart execution to create good outcomes. Machiavelli observed that humans are fundamentally self-interested, but he didn't see this as a moral failing. He saw it as a design feature that could be leveraged for mutual benefit when properly understood. Your coworker isn't helping you out of pure altruism. They're building a reciprocal relationship that benefits them too. Your friend isn't loyal because of your inherent worthiness. They stay because you add value to their life in ways they appreciate. This might sound transactional, but it's actually liberating. When you understand what motivates people, you can create genuine win-win situations instead of one-sided arrangements that breed resentment. Think about the most influential people in your life. Chances are, they've mastered this balance intuitively. They're generous, but not pushable. They're supportive, but not enabling. They create relationships where others feel valued while maintaining their own boundaries and dignity. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of appearing virtuous, while having the flexibility to act pragmatically when virtue alone isn't sufficient. This isn't hypocrisized psychological sophistication. The parent who is usually gentle but can be firm when necessary raises confident children. The leader who is typically collaborative but can make tough decisions alone earns deeper respect. The friend who is generally supportive but can deliver hard truths when needed creates more meaningful connections. But perhaps Machiavelli's most profound insight was about the nature of change itself. He understood that transformation, whether personal, political, or social, rarely happens through gentle persuasion alone. It requires a combination of vision and force, inspiration and strategic pressure. Every meaningful change in your life has probably followed this pattern, even if you didn't recognize it at the time. The job you finally left after months of contemplation. The relationship you ended despite loving the person. The habit you broke after years of failed attempts. In each case, there was likely a moment when emotional clarity met strategic action. When you stopped hoping things would change naturally and started creating the conditions for change yourself. This is the heart of Machiavellian wisdom. The recognition that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst isn't pessimism, it's practical wisdom that allows optimistic goals to manifest in a complex world. You can still believe in love while understanding manipulation. You can still choose kindness while recognizing when firmness is required. You can still trust people while maintaining healthy boundaries. The goal isn't to become calculating or cold. It's to become consciously competent in the art of human relations, rather than unconsciously vulnerable to those who already are. Machiavelli understood that power isn't inherently corrupting. Powerlessness is often more dangerous because it leads to resentment, passive aggression, and self-destructive behaviors that harm everyone involved. When you develop the ability to influence outcomes in your life, you actually become more generous, not less. You can afford to be kind because you're not operating from a position of desperation or resentment. Consider how differently you treat people when you're financially secure versus when you're struggling. How much more patient you are when you feel respected versus when you feel taken advantage of. How much more giving you can be when your own needs are met. This is why Machiavelli's insights remain relevant centuries later. He wasn't teaching people to be monsters. He was teaching them to be effective so they could afford to be good. The alternative is the tragedy he witnessed repeatedly. Good people who became ineffective. Ineffective people who became bitter. And bitter people who caused far more harm than strategic thinkers ever could. There's a profound psychological truth hidden in Machiavelli's observations about human nature. We don't just want to be loved, we want to be chosen. We don't just want to be respected, we want to be valued. And value, by definition, requires some element of scarcity or choice. This is why the person who is always available becomes less interesting than the one who has boundaries. Why the friend who agrees with everything becomes less influential than the one who offers thoughtful dissent. Why the employee who never says no becomes less valuable than the one who strategically prioritizes their commitments. Understanding this doesn't make you manipulative, makes you psychologically literate. You begin to see the invisible currents that shape every interaction, every relationship, every social dynamic you're part of. Armed with this awareness, you can make conscious choices about how to engage. You can be generous by choice rather than default. You can be kind because it serves your values, not because you're afraid to be anything else. Machiavelli's greatest gift wasn't his political strategies. It was his willingness to look at human nature without romantic illusions, to see people as they are rather than as we wish they were. This clarity doesn't breed cynicism if you approach it correctly. It breeds compassion because, once you understand why people behave as they do, you can respond to their actual needs rather than your projected expectations. The colleague who takes credit isn't necessarily evil. They might be insecure and operating from scarcity. The friend who only calls when they need help isn't necessarily selfish. They might not understand how to maintain relationships during good times. When you see these patterns clearly, you can address them skillfully rather than resentfully. You can create boundaries that protect both parties rather than enabling destructive dynamics. This is the mature application of Machiavellian thinking, using insights about human nature to create more honest, sustainable relationships rather than manipulative ones. The alternative is to remain unconsciously influenced by people who understand these dynamics intuitively while you operate from naive assumptions about human behavior. Every relationship in your life exists within a context of mutual influence. The question isn't whether power dynamics exist, they always do. The question is whether you're going to understand them consciously or remain subject to them unconsciously. Machiavelli would encourage you to study these patterns, not to exploit them, but to recognize them when they're being used against you and to engage more skillfully when you need to influence outcomes in your own life. The shy person who never speaks up in meetings isn't being virtuous. They're being strategically invisible. The aggressive person who dominates every conversation isn't necessarily confident. They might be compensating for deep insecurities through psychological intimidation. Neither approach is optimal. Machiavellian thinking suggests finding the middle path, being confident enough to contribute meaningfully while being perceptive enough to read the room and timing your contributions for maximum impact. This applies to every area of life where human psychology matters, which is to say, every area of life that matters at all. In romantic relationships, the person who maintains some mystery while being emotionally available creates more lasting attraction than someone who is either completely transparent or manipulatively withholding. In professional settings, the employee who is reliable but not doormat-like, collaborative but not spineless, friendly but not desperately approval-seeking, tends to advance more quickly than those who operate from either extreme. In friendships, the person who is supportive but honest, available but not needy, loyal but not enabling, creates deeper connections than those who are either people-pleasers or emotionally unavailable. These aren't manipulative strategies. They're psychologically intelligent approaches to human connection that honor both your needs and the needs of others. Machiavelli understood that sustainable influence comes from aligning your actions with reality rather than fighting against the nature of human psychology. This doesn't mean compromising your values. It means expressing your values in ways that actually achieve the outcomes you desire, rather than just making you feel morally superior while your goals remain unmet. The parent who wants to raise confident children learns when to be supportive and when to allow struggle. The leader who wants to create positive change learns when to inspire and when to require. The friend who wants genuine connection learns when to give space and when to show up. In each case, the skill lies in reading the situation accurately and responding appropriately, rather than defaulting to the same approach regardless of context. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about adapting your strategies to changing circumstances. Not moral flexibility, but strategic intelligence in service of consistent values. The goal is to become the kind of person who can be trusted to handle power well, because you understand both its potential for good and its capacity for corruption. Most people fear their own power because they've seen it misused by others. But avoiding influence doesn't make you virtuous, it makes you irrelevant. And irrelevant people can't protect what they love or create the changes they believe in. Machiavelli's ultimate message wasn't about becoming a lion or a fox. It was about becoming fully human, acknowledging all aspects of human nature so you can choose consciously how to engage with the world. You have within you the capacity for both strategic thinking and genuine compassion, the ability to be both strong and kind, both perceptive and trusting, both influential and ethical. The choice isn't between Machiavellian wisdom and moral goodness. The choice is between naive goodness that often fails to achieve good outcomes and strategic goodness that can actually make a positive difference in the world. Tonight, as you reflect on the relationships and challenges in your own life, consider where you might be operating from wishful thinking rather than clear seeing, where you might be hoping for the best while neglecting to prepare wisely for the complexities of human nature. This isn't about becoming cynical or manipulative. It's about becoming consciously competent in the art of living among other humans, all of whom are complex, contradictory, and capable of both remarkable goodness and frustrating selfishness. Machiavelli's insights remain powerful because they acknowledge what we all know deep down but rarely admit, that good outcomes require both good intentions and skillful means. The wisdom lies not in choosing between idealism and pragmatism, but in learning to dance gracefully between them, allowing your values to guide your goals, while your understanding of human nature informs your methods. If this message touched you, if you recognize yourself in these words, if you're ready to see more clearly and act more skillfully in your own life, comment, "I choose strategic wisdom." Let's begin this journey of conscious living together.